Hi everyone, and welcome to Creative Chelsea. If you like this video, please let me know by giving it a thumbs up or commenting below. If you want to see more of my videos, press the subscribe button and click on the bell for notifications. If you need any Stampin' Up! Products to make these cards, you can visit my online store and the link is in the description box below. When you purchase Stampin' Up! Products through me, you can earn free products. Check out my current customer appreciation products on my blog. The link is below in the description box. Today I'm going to share with you this new quick and easy layout design I came up with recently. And I want to share with you some tips and tricks on how to make a bunch of these cards quick and easy, as well as some different ways to step up the card if you want to have that extra special card for somebody. So as I was coming up with this card, I wanted something that I could use a full sheet of designer series paper with, as well as see both the front and the back of that paper. So this design uses one full sheet of designer series paper, and you can create 6 cards from that one sheet. So let's go ahead and get started. What you're going to need to make this layout is a card base. And you can use any color. I'm using a Highland Heather card base, and it's been cut to 5.5 inches by 8.5 inches and scored at 4 1/4. Then you're going to need your designer series paper. And I'll go over how I cut it so that I can get 6 pieces from one sheet. But the final dimensions are 3.5 inches by 5.5 inches, and then 3/4 inches by 5.5 inches. And then you do need a strip that's going to kind of bridge the gap between those pieces. And this is 7/8 of an inch, so just barely under 1 inch by 5.5 inches. Now, most of our images are going to sit around this vellum piece, and it's going to ground those images to the card. And so I really love vellum, and I'm using it more and more on my cards. This piece is 2 inches by 4 1/4 inches. So you can get about 10 of these pieces from one 8.5 by 11 piece of cardstock in vellum. And then our greeting is going to go on a strip of Whisper White cardstock. So the important part about this dimension is that it needs to be 2.5 inches wide. The height can be any dimension depending on your greeting that you're using. And so this one here is 1.5 inches in height. And that's what's going to fit really nicely with my greeting, May Your Season Sparkle. So you also will need a scrap piece of paper for any stamping to create your focal point. And I've just got a large piece of Whisper White cardstock here that's going to fit that stamp. Okay, so before we go any further, I want to share with you how I cut my designer series paper so that I can get 6 cards from one sheet using this layout. So right now I have a 12 by 12 sheet of designer series paper. One thing I like about Stampin' Up! Paper is that it is double-sided, and so you can use both patterns to create your cards. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to cut at 5.5 inches all the way down. I'm going to then cut again at 5.5 inches. And this is going to give me a 1 inch strip. Now our strips for our card are 3/4 of an inch. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut this 1 inch to 3/4. Now this design is really good for this type of card because both sides don't necessarily have a direction. If by chance I was using paper that had a direction, then I would need to be more aware of which direction that paper is going for these cards. Now I'm going to cut that strip into 2 pieces at 5.5 inches each. And I'm just going to have a little bit of paper left over, and this is just trash. So now I'm going to cut each one of these 5.5 by 12 inch strips at 3.5 inches. So 1, 2, and 3. So I now have 3.5 by 5.5 pieces for my card, and I could use either pattern. And I do have a 1.5 inch strip here, and so I can just cut that right in half at 3/4 of an inch. And so now I have those two pieces for that, for the strip on the other side. So you can see, and all I would need right now to cut would be the Pacific point, and that is cut at 7/8 of an inch by 5.5 inches. And then I can just repeat on that other sheet that is 5.5 by 12. So again, cut that at 3.5 inches and repeat 3 times. And then this little piece we cut at 3/4 of an inch. And we have all our pieces now so that we can make 6 beautiful and easy cards. So the stamp set I'm using is Snowflake Wishes, and the designer series paper is the Snowflake Splendor, and they coordinate really well, and they are also part of the Snowflake Splendor suite, which includes some of these other products that I'm using on my stepped up card. So let's go ahead and start with our stamping. So to begin, we're going to stamp our snowflake in Highland Heather, and I really like that punch of color for these cards. There's a little bit of Highland Heather here on this pattern, and so I'm coordinating, so that's where I'm pulling in that coordinating color. And then use that Highland Heather, just going to ink it up and stamp it down. Now, if you haven't used this Snowflake Wishes stamp set yet, I'm just going to share with you, oh, I stamped off a little bit. So you're just going to flip it over and stamp again. This time I'm going to try to get a little closer to the middle. So I just want to share with you how this image stamps. So it's not a solid image, it has more of a watercolor effect to it. So you can see there's some light areas and some dark areas. And I really love that about this stamp set. And it's the same for all of the snowflakes in that set. So you're going to now want to cut this out. And another nice thing about this suite is it does come with coordinating dies. And so all you need to do is just find that coordinating die. You're going to add it to your image. And then place a little washi tape on one end, and that's going to keep it in place so it doesn't shift. You want to make sure your washi tape is on the outside of your image and not over your stamped image. Okay, so that's in place, and so now I'm going to run this through my Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine. I just love how quick and simple it is to cut out an image using the coordinating dies that Stampin' Up! Offers with their stamp sets. So I'm just going to go ahead and put those away for now, and we'll come back to that. So the next thing we need to do is stamp our greeting. And because I'm making a bunch of these cards, I wanted to pull out my stamparatus. Now, I normally don't do a lot of stamping with my stamparatus because I don't make a lot of multiple cards. But because it's Christmas and I'm kind of in that rush to make some quick and simple Christmas cards, I wanted to pull this out and I wanted to share with you a tip. I personally don't like stamping up here in this corner. I think that I get a better image when I am a little further away from that hinge. My only problem is that there isn't a natural place for me to put a piece of paper like it is up in this corner. So you can see that there's this natural guide here that creates that 90-degree angle. And so my tip is to actually to create your own guide for your paper using the magnets. So when you use a photopolymer stamp set like this Snowflake Wishes stamp set, you're going to need to use this foam pad, and that just lifts up your paper so it can connect with your stamp. And so all you need to do to create a guide is use these magnets. So when you are using these magnets, you just want to be careful because they're very strong and they will connect to each other really quickly. And I have seen them shatter. So what you do, it's pretty simple, is you just go ahead and lay one down. And this is going to be your left edge. And then you can either do top or bottom. I tend to like to have a bottom edge. And so you just make, so you have a left and a bottom. You could even flip-flop these and have a right and a bottom or a top. And then you just line it up, your paper where you want it. You may have to adjust to make sure that they are at a 90-degree angle to each other. And then you just take your stamp, and you want to make sure your stamp is clean. And then you just add it to your paper. And you just line it up so that it's going to be on your paper nice and straight. And this is one of the things I like about the stamparatus, is that you can line up your images before stamping to make sure that they're going to stamp exactly where you want them. Okay, so then you go ahead and close that plate and it automatically picks up your image. Now, because these stamps are sticky, it also will pick up my paper. But because I have this guide, I can always put that paper back in there and either re-stamp it or place it exactly where that stamp is going to stamp again. And then you just ink this up, and I'm using Pacific Point, which is just a really bright blue. Go ahead and make sure that paper's where I want it, and then stamp. And then if you do a good job stamping, it will lift up, and then you can just remove that paper, and it's perfect every time. So I actually am going to stamp the second one for our second card as well, and you can just see how quick and easy this is to get a perfect image every time. And if you're doing mass stamping, you just really need the stamparatus. And you can see how quick and easy it is to get that perfect image. So now we're ready to put this card together. So the first step here is to fold along that score line and then use a bone folder to make a nice crease. And then you're going to just decide which side of paper you want to show on your card. And I'm going to go with this darker blue for the big piece. And I'm just using a little bit of liquid adhesive along the edge. And then that's just going to give me that chance to kind of move my paper around so that it's lining up with my card base. And we will smooth that glue out in just a minute. And then for the edge, I'm using the opposite design. So a little bit of liquid glue along that, and then that just gets added directly to this Pacific Point strip. And what that's going to do is the Pacific Point strip is just a little bigger on one side. And so it gives me a nice little border that's going to go over the seam between those two pieces of paper. So then a little more adhesive on this one. And then, like I said, that's just going to go ahead and cover up the rest of this card base. So you're really not seeing the Highland Heather card base here. You could really use any color card base. I just wanted Highland Heather because it was light enough that you could write on it, and it coordinated nicely with my stamped image. And I think it's fun to have that little pop of surprise color when you open your card. So next we're going to add our greeting to the vellum. And I'm going to use a dimensional, just going to place a nice big one in the middle. And then I'm going to use my grid paper. And I'm lining it up here in the middle, that left corner into that middle section. And then I'm going up 2 squares, which is about a 1/2 inch. And then I go over 1. And that's going to put that greeting right in the middle of my vellum. So you can see that there is a 1/4 inch on both sides and a 1/2 inch from the bottom. Then the next step is to add my snowflake. and I want this on a dimensional as well. And just to make it quick and easy, I'm just placing one in the middle, and then this is just going slightly over my greeting because I have the space. Now, if I had a greeting that filled up that entire space, I could, of course, move that up or even underneath the greeting, depending on the way I want that to look. And then all you need to do to finish your card is place a little adhesive behind those elements and then add it right to the right side of your card base. So it's just slightly over the strip here. You can see it's about 1/4 of an inch. That vellum is over the strip about 1/4 of an inch. And we're going to then open it up and smooth out that liquid adhesive. And that card is all done. So before we move on, I'd like to share with you the same card layout using a different designer series paper. So this is the Gilded Autumn Specialty Designer Series paper. So you can see that this paper has that beautiful foil printed in it. And we've got this fun mint macaron, and I've placed it on a mint macaron card base. And then instead of using the opposite side of that paper, I'm using the brushed metallic cardstock. And I've just done the exact same thing. So I did take out that little border here that I've added to this card and just created, so this thickness here is 7/8 of an inch, which is exactly what this thickness of the Pacific Point cardstock was. I just didn't add the strip. And so this is from that same paper pack. It's just a different pattern, and I've used the copper foil sheet here for that accent piece. Okay, so now let's go ahead and step up this card. And so I'm going to show you 2 examples, and then we're going to just kind of quickly walk through how to create a stepped up card using this simple layout. And so what I've done here is I have taken that vellum, and you can see that I have embossed it. And I've embossed it with the Winter Snow embossing folder, which is also part of that Snowflake Splendor suite. I've also added some of this pretty Snowflake Splendor ribbon that has kind of an iridescent shine to it, and I've just placed that behind the greeting. We've also added some of these fun blue adhesive backed gems, and that's just another little sparkle that we can add to the card. So instead of using a stamped image for my focal point, I have die cut these 3 snowflakes using the So Many Snowflake dies. Now on this card, I kind of even stepped it up further and used some shimmer paint on that cardstock so you can get even more of a iridescent look. And so I'm going to go ahead and show you how I made this card. So I've already started with my card base, and it's exactly the same as the card base we made together. I've just used the opposite patterns here. I have also already embossed my vellum piece. And so what I need to do is add some shimmer paint to my cardstock, and then we're going to die cut it out. So I have some Frost White shimmer paint, and I'm going to use this along with a Stampin sponge. And I'm just going to add a little bit of paint, and then I'm going to scrape it off. And that's just going to give me a very light amount of paint here. And then I'm just going to add it to one of the cardstocks. I'm kind of running out a little bit. Let's go get a little bit more. Just going to add that right there to the center of each one of my cardstocks. I don't necessarily need to go to the edges because I am going to be cutting out a snowflake from this piece of cardstock. You can see here that this Pacific Point really shows up that beautiful iridescent look from the shimmer paint. And you can go over a couple times if you want to get a little thicker paint on that cardstock. We're now just going to place those off to the side and let those dry for a minute, and then we'll cut them out with our coordinating So Many Snowflakes dies. So while we're waiting for that to dry, I am going to add the ribbon to the back of our greeting. This ribbon has a really thick texture to it, and so I'm going to use this tear and tape adhesive, which is a little stronger than the Stampin' Seal, to adhere it to the back of my greeting. And so what I like about this adhesive is, like it says, it's just, you can easily tear it and apply it to your projects when you need something a little stronger. So I'm placing my ends together and finding the middle point of that ribbon. I'm just going to add it to the back at a slight angle, and then I'm just going to wrap it around my finger on the ends just to give it just enough little bit of a loop to show up behind that greeting, just like that. And then I am going to actually apply one more piece of tear and tape right in the center, and that's just going to make even a stronger bond with the ribbon. So just got that on there. Then I'm removing the paper, and you can see how now that ribbon's not going to go anywhere. I've got it down on the cardstock in the back, and I've also covered it on the front. Now to add this to my vellum, I'm just going to place this time 2 dimensionals because I really want to make sure that it adheres. The vellum's bumpy and the ribbon's a little bumpy. I just want that little extra bit of adhesive. So again, I'm lining it up, going up 1/2 inch and over 1/4 of an inch, and placing that right there in the middle of that vellum. Okay, so these are now dry, and I've just placed my dies on them. It doesn't really matter which ones you're going to use, just as long as this shimmer paint is covered. As long as the shimmer paint is covering the area you're going to cut. So just place that on my platform, and I'm going to run it through the Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine. Okay, so then when I remove these, before I take them out of the dies, I'm actually going to place a dimensional in the center of each one of these snowflakes. And this is going to do 2 things. It's going to pop it up for my card, and it's going to keep those little pieces inside, which is what I want for this card because it's a little bit on the busy side, and so I kind of want more of a solid snowflake. So now when I remove this snowflake carefully, it's going to come apart with those little pieces inside. Just be super gentle and careful with this one. This one's super duper delicate. There we go. Okay. So you can see there's a little bit of shimmer on there. Okay. This turned out really great. This one came out super easy. And you can just use that dimensional to pull it from the die. And this one should also come out pretty easy. They're not quite as delicate as that first one. Okay, so now we're going to just add them to our card. So you really can add these to your card any way you want. I'm just going to put this big one up here in the corner. This purple one I'm going to bring down into the greeting area a little bit. And then the Pacific point is going to go off to the left, just to kind of fill in that space. And then we're going to add some liquid adhesive again behind those elements. And then place it on our card in the exact same place we had it before. It's about 1/4 of an inch into that strip. And then open it carefully and rub it back and forth to smooth out that glue. And then the last thing I want to add are some rhinestones. So these are like blue adhesive backed gems is what they're called. They come in this dark color as well as a light color. And I really love using them with this paper. And so that stepped up card is now all done. So I hope you give this layout a try. If you are in need of dimensions or would like to see how you cut your designer series paper so that you can create 6 cards from one sheet, you can visit my blog, creativechelsea.com. Thank you so much for watching. Have a creative day. Bye.